say the reason I went to Congress in 1988 was because I thought everybody needed to have a health care plan. And I was working in Africa with the State Department, had a great job. But this opportunity came, and I came back to work on it. Well, I got there when Mrs. Clinton arrived, and Mrs. Clinton, we tried, and we failed. And we hung on, and then we tried again with Mr. Obama, and we got something started. You all know that the issue is presently in the Supreme Court, and I listen to people tell me it's going to be thrown out, they're not going to accept it, and all the rest. But my belief is that sometime in June or early July, the Supreme Court will say by a 6-3 vote that the President's plan is constitutional, and the individual mandate is constitutional, and that we will then start in the next session of Congress implementing the program for all Americans. And as you all know, as you get older, wheels start falling off your wagon. And when you're young, you don't think you'll ever need health care, but the older you get, the more you know you're going to need it. And sometimes illness strikes young people as well. So no one is safe in this society economically if you don't have health insurance. Because something happens when you get hit in the street out there, you can be wiped out by health care bills. And everybody knows it. It's in the back of their minds. And we ought to have the security that they have in every other country, every other industrialized country in the world. That is knowing if you're sick, nothing's going to be taken care of. And that's really what I've been doing in Congress, and the reason I'm going back is because I want to be there on London again, is because I'm going back because I think it's going to be implemented by 2014, and all of 2013 we're going to be putting together the details of what's going on. The original bill we passed is kind of like putting up the shell of a house. And we said, everybody come on, move into the house. And everybody said, well, let's see how it's going to turn out. Well, now we're going to decide what color we're going to paint the walls, and what kind of light fixtures, and what the countertops are going to be. It's all of the finishing of the health care plan that's going to go on in 2013. And so it's going to be, in my view, a very exciting time in Congress. And I'm eager to be there. Being elected to Congress is a huge responsibility because you are chosen by about 800,000, 750,000 people to represent them in Washington, D.C. They give their trust to me to go back and represent them. And that's an exciting possibility, but it's also a big responsibility. So I've been lucky to have been chosen 12 times by the people to represent this district. And I'd like to go back and finish up the job. So I'd be glad to answer questions about anything you've got in mind. And if you've been wondering about, you can read the newspaper or watch television, you guys come away sometimes and say, what in the world is going on? So this is your chance to at least get one guy to you. Yes?
Isn't that sort of what happened with Social Security when Roosevelt put it through? They had to go back through and finish it up.
When Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected in 1932, and at that point, they put together a Social Security plan, unemployment insurance. We didn't have unemployment insurance in 1932. We didn't have Social Security. We didn't have Medicare. We didn't have money for people who didn't have food, welfare programs. We didn't have any of that. So he wrote it in 1933, but it didn't get passed until 1935 because it took him 2 years of pushing and fighting to get it in place, and that's the program we have today, which has been in place since 1935. We added Medicare in 1964. In 1935, the president wanted to have health insurance. He thought that was a part of what ought to be a public security program for the country. But he was carrying unemployment insurance, and he was carrying Social Security, and he was carrying welfare, and he was carrying foster kids, and it was just too much to carry. So he said, I'll leave it here, and I'll come back to it. And it never happened. He tried again in 38, and then Harry Truman tried in 48, and Richard Nixon tried in 71, and late was tried in '93, and we had just never gotten the health care step. So people have been trying since 1935 for the health care, and we're going to get it right.
On a more local nature, this is a wonderful community, Greenbridge. We have a lot of people living here, and I know there's supposed to be a lot of affordable homes sold in the area, but we haven't been able to do that. Do you have any ideas how that might be accomplished? It's a tough one, I know, but
I wish I had a magic wand. The biggest problem that the middle class faces in this country right now is the whole question of home ownership. There are thousands of people who are living in places where they paid so much for it that they can't refinance the loan now because they're underwater, or they're being foreclosed on. We got about 9 million homes in this country right now that are being foreclosed on. So it gets very hard to sell new housing when there's this overhang of foreclosures out there, because people are trying to decide, well, why should I buy a new place over here when there's this one over here that's going into foreclosure? Maybe I can get a better deal there, and the banks don't want to lend money. So you've got a whole bunch of things that are making it very hard. And I think that my own personal belief is that the banks should give reductions in loan amounts and take the losses so that we can get the housing market going again. Right now, if you have a house, where I live on Queen Anne Hill, if you have a house between $400,000 and $900,000, you could sell it tomorrow. There is no inventory up there. But when you come out here, there's all kinds of places all over the place. So people say, well, maybe I can find a better deal. I'll wait. And so we've got to get that whole thing going again. And I've dropped in a couple of bills about how to help people with foreclosure situations or preventing foreclosure. Because foreclosure isn't good for the family, it isn't good for the bank, it isn't really good for anybody. Because most of us, I mean, my father told me when I was 20 years old, first chance you get, you buy a house. And that's what all of us in the middle class were taught, was that was going to be where we had our income. We had our base of assets, was our house first, and then other things. But all of us were put into that, and now it's very hard to do. And so I have been working on it and trying to get people convinced, but there's some people who believe that there's no way to make it better, and it just let the free enterprise system work it out. I don't agree with that. I really think there needs to be some governmental help to make it happen, because that was the first thing Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in 1933, was stop the foreclosures, because people were losing their houses everywhere. And in those days, it was a little bit easier. You backed the old flivver up to the house, threw the furniture up on the top, and drove off to California and got a new job. And that's what people did. That's why the Okies all went to California. I mean, that was a way you solved it. But now, if you own a house here, who do you sell it to? Move to a job, if there's a job in Colorado or Montana or somewhere. So a large part of the job problem in this country is that people are stuck having a house that they bought, and they're losing everything they have if they leave that house. Well, that's why it's a very difficult situation. Yes?
It seems to me the housing crisis was the whole country wanted this euphoria about houses were worth more and more. And if somebody was out in those 5 years buying a house, like a lot of my relatives, they end up holding the bag when they bought a house too much. The banks told them the house was worth that much, the appraiser sold it was worth that much, the mortgage guy is certainly worth that. And now they're all putting the individuals around the country saying, your equity goes first, and then we're going to bankrupt. So it seems to me, my question is, why isn't Congress going back at the banks and making them take more of the hit? Because this whole idea that somehow we have to preserve banks because their capital is going to keep us alive, they got tons of capital in this country. to take more of the payments.
I'm with you, but I am in the minority. There are a lot of people who think the banks, we have to worry about the banks. I never worry about banks. They always come out on top. It's like going to the casino and worrying about the guys who run the casino. They're going to win. And so I think that the Congress is going to, that's why I was saying what I said about you ultimately have to say to the banks, if you sold that to that guy, said it was worth $600,000, and sold it at 7% interest, okay? Now the interest rate is 3.5, and he wants to get a 3.5 interest so he can afford to keep paying for it. But you say no, but the house is only worth $500 now. You've lost $100,000. He didn't lose it. The economy took it away from him. So the bank should take that $100,000 loss, in my view. I think they ought to say it's $500,000 and let them refinance the loan. And that's that. I mean, I hear that story in my office. I had a community housing thing at Cleveland High School, and the banks that were there, and there were probably 500 people there on a Saturday morning, all losing their house, trying to figure out some way. They're not bums. They're not people that are trying. They're working. They're doing what they thought they were supposed to do in the society. But the society has crunched them, and that's really why my worry about what's going on in Russia right now is that the middle class is being squeezed. Because if you've got kids in college and the tuitions are going up, right? And you're getting squeezed down the house side, and you don't have health care, you're in a vice that is really very, very tough on the middle class. And I personally think that the president should be stronger. I've told him so.
Well,
That's my view, because I really think that there is a place for government to protect people from the free enterprise system.
Right.
I'm not against the free enterprise system, but I do think that there are times when the greed or the profit making, maybe this is called profit making, of the system gets out of control, and the government has to step in and say, wait a minute, this is not, you cannot do this to all these people.
well, and I think it's great that government steps in. We had a couple of months ago a ruling that the banks had to work with with borrowers. And it's been 24 months now that I've been working on loan modification with Bank of America. So I finally get the loan modification, and I'm in a trial period for 3 months. So I pay $450 for 3 months, and if I pay on time, then they don't tell you what the terms of the modification may be. So in June, it'll be 24 months. I get a call from Bank of America from that piece, and they wait until it's 5 o'clock here, or they call me when they know that I'm at work. So and so will be calling me about the loan modification. And so it's great that we have this in writing, but the reality of it happening, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, unfortunately, you're very typical. I mean, if I had a nickel for every story that I heard like that, I could retire.
Although I sat in front of Bank of America downtown with my walker and a big sign saying, they don't work with you.
Well, that's where it is in my view, we have to be advocates for people on that issue. And when you got a question, here's one. Juan's over there. He does housing in my office.
Oh.
So come down and tell him what happens to you. We'd like to hear the end of this story. Because then I've got ammunition to say, this is what's really happening on the ground. I mean, I can read it in the newspaper and all that kind of stuff, but it turns out that people are getting ground up like this on an endless conveyor belt in the society, and we'll keep fighting.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I have two questions that I'd like to ask is kind of off. One is, I think there's been more research on it, gentrification and I don't know if it was supposed to take programs. Only the programs,
the office. I don't know what it is. So I guess I'll be back in 5 minutes. Are you going to get to these?
I'm in Tula.
You're on the Tula?
Yes, that would be, we help women for delivery baby. No, we're not catching baby, but we're make everything sure that she's okay. The way that she wants to be
So it's like when you get extended families and grandma.
yes, and that's, you don't touch the baby, but you're there to support. And it shows a lot of because of my community what happens. They just go because they really worry about the cesarean. So there's a lot of cesarean rules in my community, really high, really high. So when they have one, then it's like 99%. They don't really get cesarean, and then the risk is high. And it's very hard because they call 911, and they don't want to get a hospital. They really worry about if they get cesarean. So, but if they have someone who does this, it's one client that I have, she was really worried. And I look at the house and then I say, you need to go. Because she had to go because she was almost. Okay.
Just a question, kind of along the lines of they're talking about earlier. After what has happened over the past couple of years when JP Morgan Chase and JP Morgan losing all that money, what is your sense in Washington as far as whether that's pushed for meaningful regulation of banks? We have this Consumer Protection Bureau, I don't think they have Warren. She was denied in that position. I feel like it's a big kind of team to this organization now, or our managers. Do you feel like what has happened over the past couple of weeks is going to make any difference in meaningful regulation?
That's a really good question. I voted against last year against giving the banks the ability to do all the crazy things. So, I thought the regulation that put in the bill by Marty Frank, it was not strong enough because the derivatives, this whole manipulation is totally outside the government's control or oversight. And it clearly is still going on. Now, JP Morgan made $10 million in last year, right? So they lost 2.5. Well, we should really pay attention. They're losing that much crazy stuff like that. Then there ought to be somebody who said there's some people out here who use pensions because a lot of people are using that kind of stuff. Use pensions. So all the unions and all the people who got pensions, or they bought stuff on the stock market in their 401k or whatever, they are at risk, very dangerous of that kind of manipulation. Now, will the Congress act this? We're in the middle of the election, and right now, what's happening in D.C. is that the Republicans don't want to make a problem with it. They have stopped legislation. It's hard to time. I just did the month of May. In the month of May, we've only been in Washington 10 days. Out of 22 working days, we're spending 10 in Washington. Their work, they'll go to work. How can you deal with this kind of stuff? And they basically are trying not to do it the way Obama fixed it. Everybody's saying, great, we got to re-elect him, right? So their goal is not to make people excited about it. I think he's been a very good president on a lot of levels. In some areas I would push him further. I don't agree with everything, but I do agree with an awful lot of what he's done. They are trying to drag it down in a way that is very destructive for the rest of the society. Is what happened at JP Morgan last week. Ought to worry everybody in here. Maybe not directly, maybe not effectively, but what's happening to the society is we still got it's too big to fail. Anybody know it's too big to fail? None of you think so, right? You know that you went down. Well, people say, well, you should have done better. You should have worked harder. You should have done something. Well, you don't let some guy up there with, and in my view, whether we're doing an election, I think we will get back to what happened in the election next year. The same problems exist. As long as you allow people to take your money and invest it any old way they want, and then give them a government backup in case they lose. It's like going to the casino, right? You throw all of your lunch money away, and then you go down to the bank and say, well, I need some money because I lost all my money at the casino. People would say, you are out of time. Well, we gave the bank $7 trillion. So there's lots of reasons to be angry. The Occupy Wall Street movement, I think, is a real point, and I think ultimately it's going to grow if we don't start to do something about what's going on with this guy. Because the morning thing is like, the mines, they used to put a canary in there. The canary smelled methane gas and started to fall on the floor. People said, uh-oh, we got a problem. Well, that's what this JP Morgan is. It's the mine, it's the canary in the mine. It's still a problem, and it's still not dealt with. And it makes me angry.
So then, do you feel that hopefully God be with us, that Obama gets back in? Is he going to go through the same hell he's just going through now? Or are they going to finally turn around and do something for the nation? Not themselves, not to get rid of him.
It's also, that's a very good question. It's a somewhat big question. Let me talk a little bit about it. The 2008 election was a very exciting election for a lot of us. Because we felt we dealt with two issues that has been hanging around for a long time. We thought they'll never get resolved. We thought women are never going to be president of this country. I mean, how could a woman be president, right? And how could a person of color be president, right? So both those issues came up in the 2008 election. And it will never be a question that a woman could be president. Mrs. Clinton was right there, could easily have been the nominee and Obama's person of color. I saw the Washington Post last week, and it says that the number of minority babies born in this country is now more than people who look like me. Okay? That means 20 years from now, our population is going to be more than half people of color. And there are a lot of people who are scared to death of somehow that we in America. Well, I was just up in White Center. We had a place here with 32,000 people, 50 languages. I mean, it is America. It is everybody on the edge. And so this election is about establishing that a person of color is elected and re-elected. There's no clue. And he's so perfectly confident. He's not perfect. Nobody is. But he has done a very good job and tried to work on the other side. But they, from the very first day, McDermott from Kentucky, the minority leader, said, my #1 job is to prevent Obama from being re-elected. Well, that means you can never let him succeed anytime soon. And they have done an awful lot of damage to the people in the country by not dealing with the foreclosure issues and a whole bunch of healthcare issues, a lot of other things, in the service of making Obama inept, weak, stupid, whatever. Because they want to create the image of the emergency came. And we got this guy who builds a house and puts in an elevator to take his cars up to the second floor. How many of you have an elevator in your house to take the car to the second floor? So, this kind of image that they're trying to create is really about winning this White House. And they don't care. I said, I was on television with Al Sharpton, and I said, they'd throw grandma under the bus. I mean, if that would get Mr. Romney elected, they'd do anything. And the failure to deal with this problem it's worrisome to me. I have traveled in parts of Europe recently, and in parts of the Middle East, I was in Egypt and Libya. And people there are saying, in America, you don't seem to be able to solve that problem. Well, if your goal is not to solve any problems, that would make the president look good. Because whatever happens, if it's good, the president goes out and announces it, right? And takes the credit. So that's the way it's always been. No matter if Republican or Democrat, that's all of us. It's always happened that way. They don't want him to be able to stand up and say, look at what great things happened today. And so we are in good luck right now. And I'm hopeful after the election to get on with this. But we have to. We have to deal with the debt. We have to deal with cost control. We have to deal with foreclosures. We've got to deal with a lot of stuff. I mean, the biggest debt in this country is now student debt. It's not consumer credit cards, it's student debt. So we got all these kids out there that went to college like they're supposed to. They're now 25 and they're not going to drag $40,000 or $80,000.
No jobs.
And no jobs, right? Right.
Where are those kids right now?
They're staying.
I listen to talk radio and 1090 all the time, and the thing that I don't take everything as truth that they tell them. I sort of sort stuff out. But people are so incredibly uneducated in terms of politics, and these people are voting against themselves when they're supporting Romney, and it's just infuriating to me. And
I'm waiting for the president to turn loose the campaign. Yes, ma'am.
I wondered what we can do. I'm really concerned about the VAWA being rewritten.
Violence
Against Women and reauthorization that got rewritten by, I'm just riled up about it, and I want to know, what is it we can do? Some of these things, what is it we can do? I mean, okay, people take to the streets, and that's great, but I want to know what they can do to be more effective. So
We don't need to persuade you, so.
yeah, so
Nothing can be more effective than person-to-person contact. I mean, politics has changed dramatically. Because I knew when you couldn't get a meeting together like this, you got 50, 60 people. Without, how did you get here? Some of you got here because you saw it on the internet, or you saw it in a blog, or you saw it somewhere. And that kind of contact system was not available when I started here. So you have friends all over this country who should understand that this government that Romney's bringing in or trying to bring in is going to declare the war on women. They have had a war on women for the whole of this last 4 years. They're trying to get rid of Planned Parenthood, trying to get rid of health care during maternal and infant child care, food, kind of food stamps. Everywhere you look, they've been attacking women and children. Now, how does it work? It's only because we haven't been able to message it. And I think you can do things through organizations. And I mean, I don't know what you got on your BlackBerry. I got 8,000 people on it. So I can send 8,000 people with one finger. And people have to understand the power they have on the internet that was never there in the past. I remember the first time when I saw that tweet that Howard Dean was running for president back in 2000. And they told me, well, go to this restaurant, there's going to be 200 people. And I said, oh, come on. I'll get there, there'll be 5 people. The place was jammed because they had used the internet. They were called meetups. And somebody somewhere went send, and the word went out, and suddenly everybody showed up at that restaurant at 8 o'clock in the evening. And so I don't think it's hopeless at all. I really don't. It's tough, and it's mean right now. But it's not hopeless because you have the power to communicate with people. And you don't know where that vote is that's going to make a difference, right? So you can't try and figure out, well, I'm only going to vote for those votes and these things over here. I'm going to blast it out. And you know, I mean, in the campaign or in the office, we send out an email. We don't know if you open it, right? So first of all, we got to figure out that at the top. You know that the world's on fire or something. So press open, so they find out what the message is. I mean, there's a lot of slippage in this system, but pushing it, it's going to happen. I'm convinced. Because I believe that I believe that people will figure it out. They're not stupid. And it's a big mistake to treat them as really stupid. They understand, they just don't know what to do. They just don't figure it out. And that's what the Occupy Wall Street is really all about. Is the people trying to figure out how to whack this much. And they haven't quite got it together yet, but they're not taking. Yeah.
You touched on the edge of something that's been worrying me ever since the Supreme Court installed George Bush as president. We're coming up on a very critical election. It could be very close. How are we guaranteed the sanctity of our vote electronically? How do we keep it from being manipulated again?
Well, another good question. Rush Holt from Jersey, he's an actual rocket scientist. He was a nuclear scientist, and he's now in Congress. And he and I have been working on a bill with a number of people trying to get a paper trail from these voting machines. And the resistance against that is furious. Pushback against that. It has got to happen ultimately if we're going to have an election we trust. We still sort of trust our elections in this country. I mean, if you watch the world, you watch election in Egypt, everybody says, that's a rigged election. Are you watching one in Zimbabwe? Oh, that's a rigged election. We don't think that about our elections generally. But we're close. And that's why it is a fragile thing in a democracy that the people trust what's going on. And I think we have to make sure that that you get a record when you use a voting machine. Now, the problem, of course, then is the question about what about in this state? I'm not a big fan of mail-in ballots. I liked the old days when I went up to the Queen Anne Presbyterian Church, and the lady handed me my ballot, and I went over there and I punched holes in it. I knew what the heck happened to it, and I saw her put it in the machine, and this business about mail-in stuff gets a little bit fuzzy to me, and you have no guarantees on it. And when they're sent out, I mean. The primary election, I think, is the 8th or something like that of August. So the 8th of July, they'll send ballots all over the damn place, right? Who knows where they went? How many out went out? Right? Who filled them out? I mean, so there is the trust in the electoral process, I think, is a real question. Now, they say, well, it's cheaper to do it by mail. Well, sometimes some things are worth paying a little bit more for to have actual elections. And it is something we have been struggling with, trying to get States that are going to be decided by 3,000 votes to make sure that we know that they actually turned out that way. Because you're right. I had an interesting experience. I was in Washington, D.C., Indian family that I know. Father, mother, son, and daughter, all lawyers, came up to me and said, "What's happening to you in the United States?" That's what it means. Well, whenever we go to court, we always check to see what the Americans do on a particular case because we consider the American law the gold standard. But they said this last election for the president, this was the Bush election, they said, your Supreme Court decided they didn't have time to count the votes. Now, we in India, we have 700 million people vote. 3/4 of them can't read and write. They vote on the basis of a symbol, a hand, a tree, or a horse, or whatever. And we count every vote. And so there's when it becomes that the world is sort of looking at us saying something really crazy going on in the United States that they're not counting the votes. Begin to throw into question how legitimate is our government. And it's the legitimacy of the government. You can't have a government that's not considered legitimate by the people. And if 9/11 hadn't happened, George Bush would have had a lot of trouble. That diverted all the talk about how he got into office, this mess in New York and Al-Qaeda and all the rest of that stuff. Got everybody's mind off what happened in 2011. That was an absolute travesty. And that's part of the reason why I think John Roberts is going to vote for the health care bill. Because he's got George Bush on his hands. He's got Citizens United on his hands. And now he'll have, I threw out health care. That's not a legacy that most chief justices would want to do in the history. That's why I think he will ultimately find a way to come down on his side. We're doing, but it is something to worry about. Yes.
I own a business in this area, and there's been a couple of sentences introduced to the transportation bill that would seriously impact our business. We have a grow-your-own tobacco store, and they, into the transportation bill, have put 2 sentences that would make us manufacturers and basically put us out of business. And I want to bring this to your attention because we have 250, it's not a great number, but 250 employees in the state. And we are a business, we lose those people and they come back. And we employ people from the area. It's not a terribly difficult job, but it's something that we want to have. It's a neighborhood kind of store. We have one here in White Center, I have one here in River Valley. And, they're not just 3 or 4 employees. But, it doesn't make sense. What's the sense of it? Instead of, what happens in the store is that if somebody comes to my store, they can make cigarettes. Now, they come and buy tobacco tubes or in the machine, and they bypass the cigarette tax because they're not buying cigarettes. What happens is they can't tax the people at home. So I've established a commercial entity that they come and rent the machine, and they make them for their personal consumption. Big tobacco is like that. Now we have that. The government looks at it, the state looks at it, and says, we lose all that tobacco revenue. They can't figure out how to tax us. And it's not that we shouldn't pay, because we should pay some tax. But we're not manufacturing for commercial purposes. We're having people manufacture. And to put it into a transportation, all I'm doing is bringing it to your attention with some serious ramifications.
Who I should have you. Why don't you give it to Colin? So you just tell him that.
That's some of the stuff that goes wrong. As a side note, one of the things you're addressing in this election, this breakdown of trust of our government, really has been the backbone for all of us. And obviously it's eroded with the right. It's eroding from the left, and I don't know. I thought I had hopes for Obama kind of overcoming that, but obviously that was a little bit too much.
Well, we change things like that, but you try, and they just sit there and I think that's why I say there's stuff I wish had happened, but he's made this as a genuine effort as one can make, and succeeded in a lot of places. But you're right, it is the legitimacy of the government, on the thing, is in danger. Income tax in this country. And we also got to do it in so many ways. Now, what if you don't get it outside? What if people all started saying, well, no, I'm not going to do it? What if after people show up where you can see, because we trust that taxpayer tax marshal, oh my God, I'm going to got to be done on the 15th of April, it goes in the mail and it goes. That's all on a trust basis. Now we go, yeah, this is the line, but if half the people stop paying, like in Greece, then you got trust. So that's why it's a trust in the government. So fragile.
You see it changing. You don't see it. Well, I see it as not changing. I don't see that.
Well, I'm not pessimistic about the other. Okay. I mean, I know the problems. Yes.
Right. Neighborhood house and there's really no solution. And we have communities, minorities, like have access to gyms and basically have access to their opportunities. Because diabetes is obviously basically the living cost of death for minorities and local. So I just want to know what are you doing for people to find obesity epidemic? And also, like I said, with the breast care, there's no gym around. There's no breast exercise. We have exercise classes that we operate in our programs and sustaining activities.
What was the question?
Her question is, diabetes and things like that are epidemic obesity in this country, and people need exercise, and what are you doing about helping people learn about it? And we're putting money into the government, into the health bills to educate people about it, but as far as actually giving them exercise programs or places to do exercise, there has been, it's one of the things that's, you ask yourself, why is the school closed? Why can't the school be used to have hours or that kind of thing? There's a lot of things in the community that really need to be looked at as ways of making that everything. I don't know that there is anything, I've worked at least at a part of the convention, but it is not something that is getting the kind of push that you have. Because you're right. The biggest problem we're going to have by 2040 is the number of people who are diabetic. A huge problem in this country. And it has to do with diet and with people living their lives. So it's one of those public health problems that's out there and we're not talking about it because we're not seeing it in the population that has good health care, that has access to gyms, that has access. We're seeing it only in people in the lower levels of society economically. That's not good. parts of the society. And because they know if they go to college and they get $50,000 $20,000 in debt. And then they come out, and why would you want to go be a teacher in the school system? If you're not going to make enough money to pay back their loans. My sister was 50 years old when she finished paying off her loans, right? My daughter was a Phi Beta Kappa math student, right? Went to college, and she came out, and she wanted to teach in the school system. They paid $29,000, and Microsoft offered her $47,000 now. And that's the situation that you don't get school teachers. And the fact is, I believe that the country should say to someone, if you want to be a school teacher, we'll pay for your school. And then when you come out, you owe us 4 years. Now, we do that for the military. We don't think anything wrong with ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. You go into this college, you get a college education, you get a stipend every month, and then you owe the government 4 years of service. Nobody thinks that's wrong. I try to do that with doctors. Why should you put doctors through medical school, or let doctors go to medical school and get $150,000 in debt, and then come out and they look for a way to make money to pay off that debt? If I paid for their college, if I paid for his own college to go to medical school, and then they said, you owe us 4 years of working in Greenbridge. You're not going to get rich in Greenbridge, right? But you've got your degree, and after 4 years, you can do whatever you want. You can be a cardiac surgeon, you can be a heart surgeon, you can be anything you want. But 4 years, you can pay us back. To me, that's a very good system. And we ought to use that in all the places where people to work. And certainly teaching. Retirements in the Seattle School District, I mean, the school district is losing teachers. 50, 60, 65, 80. So, it's really good for people coming in a lot. Because the pay down there is not enough to pay off the debts. They can find anything else to hold something. And it's a real dilemma that I think both the legislature and the state legislature. I told the president I thought we ought to make medical school like ROTC. And everybody went to medical school for 4 years. And they owe us 4 years to get out. And sounds like a good idea, but maybe that's one step too far. One more question here. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to return to what she had said about anti-obesity work and kind of preventative health care. I work in anti-hunger and kind of sustainable agriculture worlds, and coming from this perspective that good food is preventative health care. I wanted to first thank you for your work to strengthen and maintain SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That is fabulous. It's so clear how necessary that program is. And it's like really heartbreaking to see cuts being proposed at a time when it's so crucial. I also wanted to say that I work with a community-based organization called the Northwest Farm Bill Action Group. The Farm Bill right now is going through the House, and we have been gathering a photo petition that I think hopefully my colleague will come soon to present to you, but of different constituents from around Seattle really asking you to co-sponsor the Local Farms Food and Jobs Act and other programs in the Farm Bill that help socially disadvantaged farmers and beginning farmers, help to increase healthy food access in urban areas such as this one that experience really poor food access, help increase access at farmers markets for, and this is probably stuff you've heard before, and you've been doing a really great job of fighting for those programs, so we just want to keep that pressure on and just express how much of a community there is behind this kind of good food as preventative health care.
It's one of the, you look out here, look at all the green grass. It's grass corn. Oh, when I came to my house on Queen Anne, I looked in the backyard and I said, you know, I'm done with grass. I'm never going to cut another blade of grass. I was like, it's going to be garden. And I was raised in the Midwest, where we had a garden in the back of the house. And we raised all our tomatoes and all our beans and all our cucumbers and zucchini when we quit. So I know about how it's done. And you don't need 100 acres. You can do in a very small area change his diet, to change his attitudes toward food, and to get people, many people come from traditions where that's what they did. They had a subsistence garden outside the backyard. So if you give them some land and say, hey, we got a guy over on Queen Anne Hill, right? You go up Gilman. There's a guy who sells parking strip. It was just blackberries and, you know, the usual stuff that grows up in a place where nobody gives a damn. So he went up there and took all the stuff off, and then he laid out a bunch of plots and let neighbors bid for it. So now you've got about 40 gardens about the size of this, maybe twice the size of this table. And people are out growing their own food. And I really think that should be encouraged because it changes the way you think about it. You go to Whole Foods and people say, oh, I can get something from any place in the world at Whole Foods, right? But the chemicals and the things that are used on it, you go in and you got an idea about what. And my view is you better grow there in a spot the size of this table, eating that than eating, and I know Whole Foods wouldn't like that, and the whole food companies wouldn't like that. But the fact is that we encourage people to get back to food. I mean, the reason we have grass, you know why we have grass? Because when most of us came as poor immigrants, the rich people lived over there, and they had a big house and a big green yard out in front of it. You've seen it, Ashton Abbey, right? I mean, that's what, and so everybody came here to the United States and they said, well, we're going to have our own abbey right here, and out in front we're going to have a nice green plot of land, like the domain that was related to the rich in England or in Ireland or wherever. And we lost that business about, I mean, one of my friends said about me, Jim is never satisfied and never comfortable if he doesn't have potatoes growing in the backyard. I have potatoes every year. Because remember, potatoes is what failed. That's what got us here. Potato famine. And so those kinds of things are very important. And I encourage and will continue. The farm bill has got to be done. We've got to stop subsidizing some of the things we're doing.
It's really exciting to see that.
And they're also talking about cutting food stamps, which is the only thing that the middle class has today. If you lose your job and you run out of unemployment, there is no welfare. The only thing you have is to put up food stamps. And that's why we've got lots and lots of people who used to wear a white shirt who are now getting food stamps and are very embarrassed and ashamed of it. To survive, they got to do it. And my view is you can't cut food stamps. But the school lunch program is another one. People say, everything is a school lunch program. You know why we have it? We have the school lunch program because so many men who were drafted in the Second World War were rejected because of bad nutrition, bad bone development, bad muscle development, all kinds of stuff. Harry Truman said after the war, we're going to give kids a school lunch so we've got soldiers ready to put in the next war. That's what it was about. School lunch is really not about feeding kids. It's not some kind of hard thing. It's, you got to have these people healthy so we can go to the war. So we, as a country, we have to think about how we make sure that everybody gets good nutrition. Otherwise, the kind of problems that we're talking about diabetes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.